Franchising is the most misunderstood and most overlooked form of entrepreneurship. We're here to educate you and help you find the entrepreneur within. Franchising is not all about the French fries.
We find that individuals who are exploring business ownership tend to have a lot of misperceptions and misunderstandings about the franchise industry. So what we want to do is help prospective business owners make confident and educated decisions before moving forward or not moving forward with a business. Welcome to Unpredicted Entrepreneur. Hello and welcome to episode 43 of Unpredicted Entrepreneur. My name is Sarah Wasco and I am joined by my colleague Roxanne Rapsky with FranNet of Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma. And the purpose of our podcast is to bring you information and resources related to all things franchising. And today we are thrilled to welcome our guest, Nick Friedman. Nick is the co-founder of College Hunks Hauling Junk and Moving. And we love his story of how he got started in entrepreneurship and thought that you would enjoy hearing it too. So Nick, thanks so much for joining us today. We know how busy you are. We really appreciate you taking time out to share your story with our listeners and our viewers today. Welcome.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we first started this podcast, we said Nick would be a great guest, and you're so busy. It took us a few months to get you on the calendar, but we greatly appreciate it. So let's just kind of dive in to how you became an unpredicted entrepreneur. You were in college. You shared that you were getting a BA in economics and Spanish, and you were also an athlete. So tell us how this whole business owner thing got started for you.
Yeah, so I was really brought up to follow the more traditional career path, work hard in school, get good grades, get a job after I get a degree, and then just kind of move up the corporate ladder. And I was home for summer vacation before my senior year of college, and my buddy from high school approached me with a beat up cargo van that his mom offered him to use to go around doing odd jobs that summer. And we actually credit his mom, not just with the lending of the van, but we also credit her with coming up with this catchy name. She looked at us and she said, you guys could be like College Hunks who haul junk. And we laughed at first. And then we were like, that's kind of catchy. It's not what people typically associate with movers or junk haulers. So we just put flyers around the mailbox. People had a need for the service. They thought the name was catchy. And we ended up writing a business plan our senior year of college, and it won an entrepreneurship competition. So that gave us a little more confidence in the idea. And then shortly after we graduated, we decided, let's make this a full-time venture. So there were definitely some skeptics that said, wait, you're going to quit after college to start a junk removal business or a moving company? Is that really a good idea? And when we first started, we were doing all the work ourselves. So I always tell the story about how we had the 800 number routed to our cell phone, and we'd be in the driver's seat driving the truck. Somebody might complain about erratic driving, and I'd be the one on the other side answering the phone while driving saying, we'll fire those guys when they get back to the office. We'll tell them to be safer on the road. We don't condone that type of driving in our company. So probably fired ourselves at least 3 or 4 times that first summer before we wised up and eventually learned how to work on the business, not just in it, and learn how to eventually scale the business to multiple trucks. And then, as you mentioned, today we've got over 200 franchise locations. So I call it a 20-year overnight success is really what it's become.
Well, you talk about that leading to working on the business and then led to franchising. And so I'm sure you consolidate a lot in there. So can you just expand on that a little bit more? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs make that mistake. They work in their business and not on their business. So I think you should expand on that a little bit more. And then we'll probably want to know a little bit about getting prepared to become a franchisor.
Absolutely. So we, as I mentioned, we were doing all the work ourselves, hauling the junk, answering the phones, driving the truck, entering things into a spreadsheet. And it was not until we started to burn out a little bit that we decided, let's figure out how we can get off the truck. And one of our mentors recommended to us a book called The E-Myth Revisited. It's by a guy named Michael Gerber. And really the simple message in that book is the reason so many small businesses fail is because the entrepreneur spends all his or her time doing the technical work of the business. And of course, the technical work has to get done at the beginning, but eventually you want to create systems and processes so that you could hire somebody to do some of the technical work while you go out and develop more clients or build the business further. So when we read that book, it was like the light bulb moment for us that if we were ever going to have another truck, let alone another location, we've got to learn how to document everything that we're doing. And eventually that's what led to us being able to get off the truck, hire a set of employees. And the book also talks a lot about franchising, the idea of franchising being a business model that's sort of a recipe for executing a business in a box. And even if you're not going to franchise your business, you want to be able to develop the systems so that your business could be replicated or handed to somebody else. And so when we read that, it sort of put in the back of our mind this notion of franchising. We started doing more research about it. We attended some International Franchise Association events, the IFA, and met some folks that were specializing in helping taking a small business that at that point had become pretty successful and helping turn it into a business that could be packaged as a franchise concept. And that was another whole steep learning curve for us, but and happy to expand on that as well. But that's kind of what led us from being just two guys with our cargo van and an 800 number to eventually being a pretty successful local operation to eventually then being able to franchise into other markets.
That's such a good explanation of that. And, you can't scale a business. If there's only you and, a few handful of people actually doing the work every day, there's no way to scale that. So I'm sure that it took a lot of time and energy and effort and thought and resources to put together those processes and systems so that it could be replicated. But then you're, as Roxanne mentioned and you alluded to, able to work on the business, hire people, and then that's how you're able to scale.
Yeah, and it's, to your point, it's not just a flip of the switch, create some systems and you're done with it. It's an ever evolving process. I mean, even to this day, we're still evolving our systems and our processes and best practices for supporting our franchises, for awarding our franchises, for helping our franchises grow and providing them the tools to help them be successful in their business as well. But for us, it literally just started with checklists, like documenting what we did every day, how we wore the uniform, how we greeted the client, how we loaded the truck, how we priced our jobs, how we answered the phone. And then eventually, as we started to be able to hire people that could do that effectively, we also empowered them with the ability to help improve upon those systems, to say, hey, if you think there's a better way, let's do it and document it so that we're not just beholden to one person, pulling one lever, but we've got the ability to expand even further beyond that. And then, ultimately our vision was to become a national brand, and franchising was the logical path to do that. And the great thing about franchising, which you guys know, is it creates a business opportunity for somebody that may not want to do all the, creative heavy or hard work, heavy lifting of creating something from scratch, but take something that's already been sort of vetted and proven and then be able to implement that, apply their own energy and effort and execution of the business model to then see it produce the financial return and sort of the personal professional fulfillment as well that ultimately we feel our business model offers. So that's kind of how that evolved.
How long were you in business before you franchised, and how large were you? I mean, because you talk about that 20-year overnight success, right? So how large were you before you franchised?
Yeah, I would say we probably franchised a little prematurely. Matter of fact, a lot of small business owners will come and talk to me about wanting to franchise their company, their small business. And I actually probably spend more time trying to talk them out of doing it, at least at that moment, rather than encouraging them to do it right away. And what I mean by that is, at the time, we still only had the one location. We had grown a pretty successful business. We were doing over $1 million in revenue and had a pretty healthy bottom line and had some decent sized team, probably 8 to 10 trucks, maybe 20 to 30 part-time employees with some management and some administrative support. But we hadn't replicated that in another market yet. And I think we probably would have been well served to try to replicate our success in another market to then prove that model before looking to go out and sell franchises. So that's what I mean by I think we did it a little prematurely. So we started our business officially in 2005. We began franchising around the 2008 timeframe. So it was about 3 years into our business journey. And if you guys remember what was going on in the housing market right after 2008, it wasn't probably the best timing for us either, because 2009, 10, 11, and 12 were kind of climbing out of that housing crash, and our business model is very tied to people buying and selling homes or having discretionary income for home improvement. And so there were definitely some headwinds, but I think good early lesson for us in business that it's not always easy. It's not always rainbows and unicorns. There's a lot of hard work and effort that goes into it. So that was sort of the evolution for us in being able to franchise the business model. And so when we started franchising, we had to some degree, I describe it as building the plane in flight because we didn't have all the systems, perfectly mapped out for our franchisees, and we were dealing with some economic headwinds. So we had to just sort of muscle our way through that. And I do think it made better business owners out of us. It helped our resiliency and grit muscle get stronger, which I think is critical for any business owner.
That's excellent advice. We get asked a lot. We work with a lot of independent business owners who are curious about franchising their business. And we usually do suggest that they have at least a second and maybe a third location to show that that model is replicatable and can be successful in other markets. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, excellent point.
I think there's sort of a glamorized notion of becoming a franchisor because small business is hard no matter what business you're in. And so the small business owner might think, hey, and we had this thought too, hey, I could franchise this business and I will make quote unquote passive income or royalty stream from the franchise owners. But there's nothing passive about franchising. It's a whole new business model. You've got to be very actively engaged in what we call awarding, but selling the franchise and then training and supporting the franchise owners to help them be successful. And it's not until you have 50 or even 100 franchisees in your system where the royalty stream becomes sufficient of scale to cover the overhead and the infrastructure and the reinvestment that has to take place to help the business grow. And so we didn't have all that knowledge. We kind of learned that stuff as we were going through it. But I think having that eyes wide open approach to what you're getting into, if you're going to franchise a small business, is very important to be aware of. It's a long road, but it's, once you make it to the other side where we have, it can be very lucrative and fulfilling.
So your role completely changed, right? Your role as the owner, as owning your own location of a College Hunk hauling junk and moving business versus being a franchisor, completely different responsibilities, right?
Absolutely. So we had to put a full-time general manager in place to run our local moving and hauling operation up in DC, which is where we started. And then we had to set up a call center to support our franchisees. So all of a sudden we were in the call center business. We had to learn how to market for franchise candidates and of course join the consultant networks. And we had to learn how to walk a franchise candidate through the process of, evaluating if this was an opportunity for them to then ultimately purchasing the franchise. And of course, once they invest in the franchise, the obligation becomes the franchisors to help get these people up and running and in business and hopefully successful to follow those systems. And so we were in a whole new business. We were no longer just in the moving and hauling business that we had gotten pretty proficient in, but we were now in the teaching others how to be successful in the moving and hauling business, which was a whole new world for us.
Well, and it's super important as a franchisor to make sure that your franchisees are successful because it's really hard to grow your franchise if your franchisees aren't doing well, right? I mean, they have to validate well and
100%. I mean, at our company, we say if it's not improving our franchisees' revenue, our franchisees' profitability, or our franchisees' fulfillment, then it's not something that we ought to be doing. And at the end of the day, a successful franchise system is so reliant on what we call the unit economics or the economics of each individual franchise owner. And it's the sum of the parts. And it's a very unique, very, I think, admirable business model. It's a very interdependent ecosystem where, we're all investors in this same common enterprise. It's the brand, that over, kind of sits over all of us collectively. But we each play a different role. Our role as the franchisor is to help identify the franchise candidates that have the most likelihood of success in this type of business, and then help support them through that. The role of the franchisee is to put in the heavy lifting and the hard work and the commitment and the passion for that brand. It's not just, going to happen for them. They have to work the system in order to have those successful outcomes as well. But I think having that mindset is really critical in understanding that interdependent nature of this business model, I think is important for all constituents.
Another great point.
Yeah, really great point. Okay, so you're just getting started and you end up on Shark Tank. So tell us about that experience. I would love to hear you share your
So I think at the time we had maybe 5 or 6 franchise owners, and we saw an ad in Inc. magazine that said, looking for entrepreneurs to pitch a business idea for a television show, major network pilot episode. And so at the time we were actually curious, like, what could we pitch a TV show about? And we said, what could we pitch a business about? Because we weren't really looking to raise capital for College Hunks. And we had actually had a fun idea for a sister company. We were going to call it College Foxes Packing Boxes. So we actually sent in our pitch video for College Foxes Packing Boxes and got selected for the show. We went on Shark Tank, episode 1, season 1, pitching that idea. But the Sharks very quickly wised up. They didn't want anything to do with a business that didn't exist and still does not exist to this day. But they wanted equity in College Hunks. So Robert Herjavec made an offer, which at the time I think was probably a reasonable offer given where we were in our business. We turned it down. That would have been worth a lot more, today, certainly, had we accepted that offer. But the other thing is, we really didn't know these sharks were going to become television celebrities, because all we knew was it was this pilot episode. Mark Cuban wasn't on the show yet. Most of these guys were known as successful business owners, but they weren't television sort of personalities yet. And so we turned it down, and the episode reruns from time to time on CNBC, and we'll get a little spike in web traffic when that happens. But I think that kind of helped at least put our brand on the map a little bit as a national company, and was a great opportunity, great experience.
I love that story so much. So my next question is, do you regret not taking Robert's offer?
I would say no, I don't regret it. I mean, hindsight is certainly always 20/20, and who knows, maybe he could have helped us get to where we are faster, or made some connections or introductions for us. But the 10% that he would have invested in at the time would have been worth over 100 times today what he had put in then. So I'm much happier to have that equity still on my side today. But who knows? He might have been able to open some doors. That, being that he is now sort of like a TV celebrity. But no regrets there.
I love it. It's such a great story. So you also mentioned in the beginning that you started this business with your very good friend. So I would love some insight from you. His name is Omar. You're more in the forefront. I'm assuming he's kind of more still on. Well, tell us his role. I don't want to make any assumptions.
Sure. Yeah.
And give us a feel for that partnership relationship.
Yeah, I think we've been really fortunate. Omar and I met in 10th grade. We like to joke we were partners in crime in high school and partners in business now, post college. But I think, a lot of people aspire to be able to go into business with a friend or with a family member. And there's a lot of horror stories out there about how that ends up. And I think for us, what has always been the key to our success as a partnership is that our vision, in other words, where we're going as a brand, as a business, and our values, kind of what we stand for, how we get there, have always been in alignment. So while we may disagree on certain tactics or may have different approaches to how we do things on a day-to-day basis, we've sort of always kept an open mind, an open line of communication, of trust, and and accountability. So with that trust, we're able to have healthy conflict, and there's no resentment, or there's no animosity towards one another if we disagree or have disagreements, because we put the vision and the values back in front of us as the core of what we're working towards. So it's been a lot of fun to be able to have somebody who I consider, a close friend, to be able to celebrate in the victories and, experiences like Shark Tank and things like that. Also, it's been great, to have somebody like that when things haven't been easy, whether it was, as I mentioned, the recession of '08, COVID, even now the economic climate is not what it was 2 years ago. And so I think having a good friend in the trenches to be able to navigate that has been great. And then we've also been able to embrace each other's strengths. You kind of alluded to it. We follow this business model called the entrepreneurial operating system. And so Omar is much more of a kind of pure visionary entrepreneur, comes up with 100 different ideas, kind of very creative marketing mindset. I'm a little bit more obsessive compulsive about the details, the nuts and bolts and things like that. And so, while those two differing personalities may frustrate each other from time to time, we also, I think, complement each other quite a bit. And that's been beneficial to the company as well.
Yeah, I think that compliment is huge. Just you each know your strengths, you focus on that, but you're each open-minded to the other person's ideas and maybe concerns. He's kind of making me think about what Jana Bailey said about her and Karen Katie, our CEO, and then our director of ops, because Jana said, I'm come up with, we can do this and we can do that. And then Karen kind of brings her back down to earth on what exactly would make sense and would be realistic for our company. So
actually, I was thinking about how we, Sarah and I share a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses, and that's not always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true too. So we recognize what our strengths are, and when we don't offset each other sometimes because our weaknesses are the same too.
Yeah, but even if you don't offset, then have somebody on the outside that can complement or offset those elements. But being sort of self-aware and also sort of collectively aware as a partnership, I think is really really important as well.
Yes, I think self-awareness is key. Like, what are you good at? Sticking with that, knowing what the other person's good at, sticking with that. And then if neither of you are good at it, to your point, bring somebody else in that is.
And staying in your lane. We talk about that a lot because we have a lot of couples going into business together. Or sometimes it's parents and children or grandparents and children. And I think it's important to define lanes so you're not all stepping on each other as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that comes through evolution, but communication. It's cliche to hear or say maybe, but the key to so many relationships, whether it's a friendship, a marriage, a business partnership, is just open lines of communication, not taking things personally, being direct, not being resentful or backdoor conversations. And and then again, having sort of a greater mission or cause it's ahead of the individual ego, I think is all pieces of the puzzle.
So I want to go back really quick, switch gears. I don't want to skip this. College Hunks came up as something catchy that Omar's mom came up with, but then it's actually an acronym that represents your business. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, and I'll credit Omar with the acronym. As I mentioned, he's sort of the creative visionary. We had so many people in the early days of our business ask us, are they all really hunks? Are they all really in college? And we got honestly tired of answering that question or not having a good answer for that question. So we came up with an acronym. We redefined hunks, and it stands for honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. And so by that definition, we've expanded the broad view of what a hunk represents. It's not just the physical, Mr. Universe looks that some people might associate with that word, but it's the service aptitude, it's the appearance in uniform, it's the trust and care that we ultimately are looking to provide to our clients. And then building leaders is one of our core values. And so the idea is that all of the employees who come work with us are going to learn skills that they'll be able to carry throughout their career. So it's almost like a college in and of itself, coming to work at this organization. So we're able to sort of maintain elements of that, the heritage of the name. And, Omar and I having actually been the original College Hunks when we were in college to now today, having over 3,000-4,000 hunks all around the country providing the service.
I love how that has evolved, and how you're really focused on, you have a mission behind those employees, and developing those leaders, and building them, and teaching them things that they might not have otherwise been able to learn if they were just in a hourly job somewhere. So your franchisees have to follow that same mindset as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we consider ourselves, I would say, purpose-driven and values-based as an organization. And we have 4 core values, one of which, as I mentioned, is that building leaders value. And the idea is that we're not just hiring people to come move stuff. We're hiring people that are wanting to help our clients through a stressful time, whether it's, moving or getting rid of their clutter, but also want to improve themselves, actually have aspiration to be a better human, and to be a better person and be a better leader. And so creating a business that can then be a platform for individuals to pursue both personal and professional development is way more rewarding for us as founder entrepreneurs than just creating a business to try to make money. Yes, the money is great, but we also say without margin, there's no mission. So we've got to be profitable. We've got to have a sustainable business if we're going to be able to deliver on those values and our company purpose, and making that positive impact. And so I think we have a great opportunity. As growing up, I always envisioned I would one day become like a basketball coach or some sort of sports coach. But I think we've been able to inject elements of that into our business by the way that we teach our franchise owners to coach their team members and help develop their team members to be better leaders.
Wow. You are coaching in essence, right? And you have a program, Future Franchisee, I think, and then you also do something for veterans. I want you to touch on that.
Yeah, so we do a lot from a social engagement standpoint. We donate 2 meals for every completed job to U.S. Hunger. We actually just completed over 3 million meals donated since we launched that program. We have a program during Domestic Violence Awareness Month where we're providing free moves for survivors of domestic violence. But then, as you mentioned, we've got our Future Franchise Development Program where we put aspiring team members that have really proven themselves on a track to become, if they wish to become a franchise owner and have the ability to earn a scholarship as a franchise owner. And then we also have our Vet Fran program, both a discounted veteran franchise program, and then continue to look for other ways to engage our veterans. A little over 10% of our franchise system are actually veteran-owned businesses, and so we think there's a lot of skill set and experience set that can be applied from experience in the military to running our businesses, our franchises, and so we've been very grateful to have that opportunity as well.
That's amazing. And I love that mission behind, the whole business. And it's just not all about making money. So we have a lot of clients. I feel like more and more these days, I mean, obviously people want to make money, but they really also want to feel like they're making an impact. So, and we talk a lot about thinking more about, outside of just what the business is. Like, yeah, you're hauling junk and moving, but there's so much more to what you're offering. So that's great. Nick, what advice would you give? What would you say are key ingredients for success in running a business?
It's hard to boil it down to a few ingredients, but the couple keys that have always been on top of my mind is patience and persistence. So with that patience, I like to say urgency of effort, but patience for the results, because there's very few business owners that felt like they made more faster than they expected to. Usually it's the other way around. And so you got to have patience, and allow the momentum and the compounded effort to materialize. And then the persistence, because there's going to be challenges, ups and downs, financial headwinds, stuff in your control, outside of your control, but you got to have that sort of grit and resilience to be able to navigate it. So I think those are the two most important elements of success in business, is just having the patience and the persistence to see it all the way through. There's probably 10 others I could rattle off that are more technical, whether it's, understanding sales or understanding finance or being able to measure your marketing or make sure you be able to hire and empower the right people. Those are all sort of the technical aspects of running a business. But I think the intangibles are those elements of the patience, the persistence, and that grit and resilience that need to be sort of within or embraced if you're going to be successful in any venture.
I like that urgency of effort, but being patient for the results. And I couldn't agree more because I know I experienced that. I'm sure you did.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. I love that line. I'm going to use it.
Yep,
Thank you.
We're stealing that. We
We're
steal a
stealing
lot,
that.
by the way.
I forget who I saw. It was like a public speaker that said, if he hears somebody else give a really good quotable, he'll attribute it to him like the first time or second time, and then after that he just makes it his own.
Then it's
I'm like,
yours.
okay.
So Nick, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
So I actually have a website, nickfriedman.com, FRIEDMAN, nickfriedman.com. It's got all my contact information, my social media handles. It's got links to our College Hunks website, links to, other resources. We actually wrote a book about 10 years ago called Effortless Entrepreneur. That was kind of the story behind our getting the business off the ground. So that would probably be the easiest way to track me down.
I have your book.
Me too.
Yeah.
I meant to bring it today. I forgot. So
No
on the
worries. All
bookshelf.
good.
yep.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. I'm sure our listeners are going to appreciate all of your nuggets, and I'm going to be sure to share this with anybody that asks me about becoming a franchisor because you made some really good points, and I appreciate that. So for those of you listening, thank you for joining us today. Please follow Sarah and I on LinkedIn. I'm Roxanne Rapske, RAPSKE, and Sarah Waskow is WASKOW. You can also find us on our website, frannet.com, and on our YouTube channel, Frannet of Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma. And lastly, you can find Unpredicted Entrepreneur anywhere on any podcast platform. Thank you.